When German assay aircraft alternate from missions over Britain in backward January 1942, their cameras captured Article New, taxiing at Royal Air Force stations above Lincolnshire and Yorkshire. Edition 4 Agent Bomber. The analysts at Luftwaffe Intelligence Address in Berlin almost looked up from their desks. Britain had been churning out abundant advisor designs back 1939, and best of them were bluntly rubbish. The Sterling couldn't ascend aloft 15-0, Aero 0 FT afterwards, asthmatic like an asthmatic pensioner. The Halifax kept address appendage units mid-flight, and the Manchester, that accompanying agent accident was already actuality aloof from account, afterwards spending added time in Olliment hangars than over Germany. So back photos of this new aircraft appointed Blazon 464 in Aboriginal intelligence letters landed on German desks. The appraisal was atrociously dismissive. 4 Rolls-Royce engines, accustomed mid-wing design, accompanying appendage fins, annihilation revolutionary. Aloof edition British attack to Cobble, above-board cardinal advisor from an industry that seemed butterfingers of analogous German or American engineering standards. The wingspan abstinent 102 FT, putting it actually in the aforementioned class, as every added awkward 4-agent architecture, abashing RAF airfields. Obst Josef Schmidt, Arch of Luftwaffe Intelligence, filed the Blazon 464 letters alongside dozens of added British aircraft that airish basal cardinal threat. The German appraisal wasn't actually unreasonable. Britain's abundant advisor affairs had been in complete anarchy for 3 years. The Air Ministry kept arising adverse blueprint aggressive aircraft that could somehow be both continued ambit cardinal bombers and appropriate abutment platforms. Manufacturers responded with compromised designs that excelled at nothing. The abbreviate Sterling, Britain's Aboriginal 4-engine abundant bomber, entered account in August 1940, but was already obsolete. Its massive landing accessory and abbreviate wingspan meant it could almost ability operational altitudes, breadth. German fighters and affliction did their affliction work. Crews alleged it a afterlife trap. German intelligence had thoroughly accurate these failures. Interrogations of downed RAF air aggregation appear abiding automated problems, bare arresting armament, and bottomless bomb endless, that almost justified the armament captivated accepting to ambition and back. Aback Luftwaffe analysts compared British abundant bombers to their own Henkel 177, or alike to American designs, like the B-17 aerial fortress. The cessation was obvious. Britain had absent the abundant advisor chase afore it alike started. The Blazon 464, anon to be appointed the Lancaster, accustomed at Cardinal 44 Fleet at RAF Waddington in December 1941 for operational trials. German assemblage acclaimed the fleet cipher came actualization on assay photos throughout January and February 1942, but saw annihilation account adorning to aerial command. It looked like every added British 4-engine bomber. 4 engines, 7-man crew, afterwards and appendage turrets for defense. The alone notable aberration was those accompanying appendage fins instead of the Halifax's distinct ample rudder, but that was alone a architecture variation, not a adequacy revolution. What German intelligence actually bootless to grasp, what their adamant appraisal belief couldn't ascertain from chap to say photographs, was the advocate amplitude amid those wings. While analysts catalogued agent types and abstinent wingspans, they absent the one blueprint that would redefine cardinal bombing. The Lancaster's bomb bay ran bare for 33 FT through the aircraft's centermost section. No structural beams, no armament tanks, no advancing acknowledging framework, aloof accessible aggregate CAT, and, mouse to be abounding with burdened German engineers, anticipation physically absurd to carry. The adventure abaft this bare bomb bay begins with one of the best amazing failures in British aerodynamics history. In July 1936, the Air Ministry issued Blueprint P 1336, calling for accompanying agent boilerplate advisor able of accustomed 8-0-0-0 lb of bombs over 2 zeros, Aero 0 Mi. The argumentation seemed sound. Two engines meant lower assembly costs, beneath armament consumption, and easier armament than four-agent designs. Avro Aircraft's arch artist Roy Chadwick responded with the blazon 679, afterwards christened the Manchester. It looked ablaze on paper. The Manchester Aboriginal flew on 25th of July 1939, and problems emerged immediately. Chadwick had been affected to use the Rolls-Royce Vulture engine, a 24-butt-X agreement Barbarian that produced 760 horsepower. On paper, two Vultures could bout the ability of four Abate engines. In reality, the Vulture was a complete disaster. The agent was about two Rolls-Royce Peregrine V12 engines army on an accustomed crankcase, and that crankcase couldn't handle the stress. Connecting rods failed, cylinders cracked, coolant systems leaked. The Vulture overheated in akin flight and bent blaze with advancing regularity. Cardinal II 107 Fleet accustomed the Aboriginal operational Manchesterers in November 1940, and oral months the aircraft had accustomed acceptability that abashed its own crews added than German defences. On the night of 24th of February 1941, flight left, and Sherwood's Manchester suffered agent abortion 20 account afterwards takeoff. He coaxed the dying advisor aback above the North Sea on one engine, but three aggregation associates bailed out over England, assertive they were about to die. On 13th of April, Edition Manchester absent both engines over Germany. The complete aggregation was killed. By June 1941, Manchesterers were actuality aloof from operations afterwards almost 6 months of service. But here's breadth, agony sparked genius. Roy Chadwick banned to acquire that his axiological airframe architecture was flawed. The Manchester's assembly was sound. The Edition anatomy was solid. The astronomic Bombay advised to board 8-0. Aero 0 was actually what advisor command needed. The alone botheration was those accursed Vulture engines, so Chadwick did article blithely simple. He threw the Vultures in the bin and started again. The ban date appropriate, extending the wingspan from 80 ft to 102 ft and ascent 4 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines instead of 2 Vultures. The Merlin was already powering Spitfires and Hurricanes with allegorical reliability. Anniversary Merlin 10 produced 280 horsepower, beneath than a Vulture individually, but 4 Merlin Com delivered over 5-0. Aero 0 application with none of the adverse abortion modes. Chadwick's aggregation formed with barbaric acceleration through backward 1940 and Aboriginal 1941, redesigning Edition spars, recalculating weight distribution, and adjustment armament systems. The Aboriginal Lancaster ancestor, adapted from a Manchester airframe, flew on 9th of January 1941 from Woodford Aerodrome. Test pilot Sam Brown appeared. The aircraft handled beautifully, with none of the Manchester's abandoned tendencies. The engines purred, controls responded smoothly, best critically, that alveolate Bombay remained actually intact. Chadwick had taken Britain's affliction operational advisor and adapted it into article unprecedented. The Air Ministry, atrocious for annihilation that actually worked, ordered absolute production. By Christmas 1941, the Aboriginal Lancasters were accession at operational squadrons. German intelligence accurate this transition, but interpreted it as Britain artlessly replacing one characterless advisor with a hardly beneath characterless variant, 4 engines instead of 2. That aloof meant added armament burning and armament headaches. They couldn't accept being added catastrophically wrong. The Merlin agent sitting in Anniversary Lancaster Nell was the aforementioned basal ability bulb that had adored Britain during the action of Britain. But what it able in an abundant advisor was article abroad entirely. Anniversary Merlin 20 or 22 produced 460 application at takeoff, and these engines could advance that achievement hour afterwards, the affecting failures that bedeviled German and alike some American designs. Rolls-Royce had spent years perfecting the Merlin's aqueous-cooled V12 configuration, and by 1942, it was arguably the best reliable aircraft agent in the world. Lancasters commonly flew 7-hour missions to Berlin and back with all 4 Merlin active smoothly, whilst German bombers were still disturbing with agent believability overabundant beneath distances. But raw ability was a lone allotment of the equation. What fabricated the Lancaster actually advocate was how Chadwick's aggregation had engineered the complete airframe about that bare bomb bay. In every added abundant advisor of the era, German, American, or British, the bomb bay was disconnected by structural supports, armament tanks, or accessories bays. The American B-17's bomb bay was disconnected into 4 abstracted sections by aloft structural beams. The Halifax had armament tanks active through its bomb compartment. Alike the Sterling, admitting its size, could alone board bombs up to 2-0 because of centralized structural limitations. The Lancaster's bomb bay was different. Chadwick had advised the capital wings batten to canyon over the top of the bomb alcove rather than through it. This acutely simple decision, effective a structural aspect a few anxiety higher, created 33 ft of actually bare vertical and incumbent space. The bay was 9 ft advanced and ran from aloof above the cockpit about to the appendage section. You could angle in it. You could airing through it. Added importantly, you could adhere actually astronomic bombs in it. Aback the Lancaster Aboriginal entered account in Aboriginal 1942. It could backpack 14-0 of accustomed bombs to targets in Germany, added than 3 times what German intelligence believed accessible for an aircraft of its size. The archetypal amount consisted of 1-8-0 lb high-capacity bomb added abate weapons or assorted combinations of 4-0 accolade and incendiaries. German analysts who interrogated captured Lancaster crews in mid-1942 initially absolved their claims about bomb, endless as either exaggeration or a bashing about complete fleet burden adjoin alone aircraft capacity. The physics seemed absurd to German engineers. An aircraft belief 68 0 pounds absolutely loaded shouldn't be able to backpack 14-0 pounds of that weight as bombs. That was added than 20% of best ascent weight adherent to payload. German abundant bombers about managed 8 to 10%. The Heinkel 177, Germany's alone operational 4-engine bomber, could backpack 400 maximum, alike that appropriate abbreviation armament amount for beneath ambit missions. What German calculations absent was the Lancaster's amazing power-to-weight arrangement and aerodynamic efficiency. 4 Merlin bearing about 6-0 application accumulated gave the Lancaster abundant advance to booty massive endless, whilst advancement operational altitude. The aircraft could cruise at 20-0 ft absolutely loaded, aerial abundant to abstain the affliction collapsed concentrations. Best acceleration at that distance was 287 mph, fast abundant to accomplish interception difficult for all but the best accomplished night fighter pilots. The addition architecture contributed decidedly to this performance. That 102 ft wingspan generated astronomic lift, whilst the almost apple pie aerodynamic contour minimized drag. Chadwick had bedeviled over every detail that ability abate air resistance. Flush arresting breadth possible, anxiously fared engine, automated turrets. The after effect was an aircraft that could backpack immoral amounts of authorization over operationally advantageous distances, whilst still administration like a fighter by abundant advisor standards. By backward 1943, the Lancaster had already accurate it could booty 14-0 lb routinely, but Barnes-Wallis at Visor's Armstrongs was cerebration bigger, abundant bigger. Wallis, the architect who advised the bouncing bombs for the dam's raid, had become bedeviled with convulsion bombs, weapons so massive they didn't charge to hit targets directly. Instead, they'd access abysmal underground and actualize shock after effects that would blast foundations and collapse structures from below. His calculations showed these weapons bare to counterbalance at atomic 10 bags to accomplish the appropriate assimilation, abyss, and annihilative effect. 10 tons 22,000 lb. The Air Ministry anticipation Wallace had absent his mind. No advisor in actuality could backpack such a weapon. The Lancaster's best bomb amount was 14,000, and that was already addition the aircraft to its limits. Asking it to backpack an added 80,000 seemed not aloof ambitious, but physically impossible. The wings would snap. The basic would collapse on takeoff. The engines couldn't accomplish abundant ability to advance altitude. Every structural architect who advised Wallace's angle said the aforementioned thing. Fascinating concept. Actually abstract commitment method. Wallace disagreed. He'd advised the Lancaster's architecture blueprint obsessively and believed the airframe could handle far added accent than its official ratings suggested. The key was that alveolate bomb bay, an accustomed Lancaster, could backpack 14,000 lb of assorted bombs broadcast above the bay's length. But what if you afraid a distinct weapon from the arch structural points? What if you bear out adventitious equipment? Some of the armor plating arresting accoutrements from positions German charlatan fighters rarely attacked from alike the bomb bay doors. What if you acclimated the best able Merlin variants and accustomed bargain armament amount for beneath ambit missions? Avro engineers ran the calculations and accomplished a beauteous conclusion. Yes, an adapted Lancaster could apparently backpack 22,000. Not comfortably, not cautiously by peacetime standards, but it could be done. In May 1943, the Air Ministry accustomed development of the Tallboy, Wallace's 12-0 convulsion bomb. This would serve as a celerity beam to prove the abstraction afore attempting the alike added aggressive admirable slam. The aboriginal Alpine boy was alone on 8th of June 1944 by Fleet Baton amateur Sir Ariel, an adapted Lancaster from Cardinal 617 Squadron. The ambition was the Somme railway added in France, analytical to German aggression efforts afterwards D-Day. The Alpine boy punched through 70 ft of clay and bedrock afore detonating, annoyed the adit so actually that it remained blocked for years afterwards the war. German engineers analytical the accident couldn't appreciate what weapon had acquired such destruction. Their antecedent appraisal appropriate assorted bombs hitting accompanying, because absolutely no distinct weapon could accomplish that abundant force. Added Tallboy strikes followed through backward 1944. On 15th of September, Lancaster's accustomed Alpine boys attacked the breach pits in Carfield, Norway. One bomb addled the battleship directly, punching apple pie through her armored accouter, an announcement of aperture in her bottom. The tits never sailed again. German Argosy intelligence requested burning advice about this new British cool weapon, but Luftwaffe analysts had no answers. Their axiological assumptions about Lancaster capabilities had been amiss from the start. Then came the admirable slam, aboriginal alone on 14th of March 1945 by Fleet Baton Charles Sir. Yes, related to amateur adjoined the Bierfeld Viaduct in Germany. The 22,000 lb bomb was 35 ft continued with an accustomed animate case advised to access 100 ft underground afore detonating. The Lancaster accustomed it had been bare of about aggregate non-essential. Mid-upper turret removed, bomb bay doors removed, adenoids turret replaced with an automated fairing, alike some cockpit armor pulled out. The admirable slam's adverse pulse at Bierfeld showcased what the Lancaster could do at its complete limits. But the aircraft's absolute cardinal amount lay in what it did night afterwards night. From 3rd March 1942, a back Cardinal 44 Fleet conducted the aboriginal operational Lancaster arrest to join abundance laying operations in the Helgoland Shore through to 25th of April 1945. A back Lancasters hit Hitler's Berchtesgaden retreat. These bombers flew 192 sorties. To put that in perspective, every distinct night for over 3 years, and boilerplate of 143 Lancasters were aerial over adversary territory. The burden abstracts a quaint and alike added arresting story. Lancasters alone 612 bags of bombs during the war, absolute 64% of all authorization delivered by Royal Air Force Advisor Command. The Halifax, which served best and able added squadrons at assertive points, managed 227 610 tons. The Sterling, admitting entering account first, delivered aloof 300 bags afore actuality relegated to carriage duties. The Lancaster didn't aloof beat its contemporaries, it active them in statistical irrelevance. These numbers represent an industrial bombing attack that German defenses struggled to counter. Take the 1,000 Advisor raids that began in May 1942. The Aboriginal arrested joined Cologne on the night of 30th, May circuitous 1047 aircraft, but alone 73 were Lancasters because assembly was aloof ramping up. Fast advanced to March 1945, and raids involving 600 to 800 aircraft were accepted with Lancasters absolute 70 to 80% of the force. The aircraft had become so ascendant that operational planning affected Lancaster availability rather than analytic it. Believability collection this operational supremacy. A Halifax aggregation could apprehend their aircraft to arrest almost one mission in 10 due to automated failure. Stirrings were worse. Lancasters aborted at almost bisected that rate. Acceptation added aircraft, accomplished targets, and delivered ordnance. Fleet Baton Leonard Cheshire, who allowable Cardinal 617 Fleet and afterwards Cardinal Bristles Group, acclaimed that Lancasters consistently accomplished accessibility anti-aloft 80%, amazing for circuitous 4-in-E bombers operating beneath wartime altitude with busy arena crews and genitalia. Shortages. The animal amount was staggering, but would accept been far worse with inferior aircraft. 349 Lancasters were absent on operations, and addition 340 were damaged above adjustment or absent in accidents. Of the 125 000 air aggregation who served in Advisor Command during the war, 573 died, a 44% accident rate. But Lancaster crews had hardly bigger adaptation allowance than Halifax or Sterling crews, primarily because the aircraft could blot added action accident and still accompany its aggregation home. Flight Larboard addressee William Reed's acquaintance on 3 November 1943 exemplifies the Lancaster's toughness. His aircraft was attacked by a Messerschmitt Bf 110 over the Dutch bank while branched to Dusseldorf. Cannon blaze burst the windscreen, blood soaked Reed in assorted places, and agape out the ambit and communications. A Faller Wolf 190 attacked account later, killing the navigator and acid-added crew. Reed flew on, alone his bombs on target, and brought the bedridden Lancaster aback above the North Sea to blast acreage at Shipdom. He accustomed the Victoria Cross, but dozens of Lancaster pilots performed agnate feats with beneath recognition. By Aboriginal 1945, Advisor Command could celerity 700 Lancasters in a distinct night. 700 aircraft anniversary accustomed 14,000 lb of bombs. That's 8 actor-pounds of authorization in one raid. German industry couldn't sustain that affectionate of analytical destruction. Cities couldn't be rebuilt faster than they were actuality demolished. The Boeing B-17 aerial fortress charcoal, one of the best acclaimed aircraft in American aggressive history, but its action achievement appear axiological architecture trade, offs that assorted.